My family never celebrated my birthday. This year, I didn't invite them to my wedding. Then they found out who I married. Now they're begging to come back. My name is Salvador. I'm 37 now. But this story starts when I was 22, the summer my family left me behind on a Colorado highway and never looked back. Until they did. I've never liked birthdays. Not because I'm shy, or because I don't want people to make a fuss. I don't like them because my family never celebrated mine. Not once. No cake. No gifts. No happy birthday song, unless you count the sarcastic muttering from my brother Alan. The only time anyone remembered was when they needed an excuse not to include me in something. That summer I turned 22, I was working at my dad's hardware store for pennies and living at home. College, my father Banks said, was a waste unless you're a doctor or a lawyer, and I wasn't smart enough for either. That was his favorite way of talking to me, casually cruel, like he was just stating facts. Alan, the golden boy, had the world handed to him like it was his birthright. Banks adored him. Mom, Irene, enabled them both. She always had that soft-spoken, tired voice, the kind of woman who'd mumble, "Stop it, boys," when Alan shoved me down the stairs, and then go back to folding laundry. We weren't rich. Not poor either. Somewhere in that gray area where everything feels like it should be okay, but somehow it's not. So when Banks announced we were going on a family road trip to Colorado for my Uncle Rick's wedding, I was stunned. We hadn't taken a trip in years. But I should have known better. 3 days in, I was already regretting not faking the flu or setting my own leg on fire to stay home. My dad and Alan spent the drive roasting me like it was a podcast segment. I was the punchline. I always was. Then came the moment I'll never forget. We stopped at a tiny rest area in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Colorado sun blazing down. Dust in the air. A sad little building with vending machines and a bathroom. I was groggy, cramped from sleeping in the back seat, and just wanted to stretch my legs. I left my phone charging in the car. My wallet too. I figured, I'll be gone 10 minutes. What could happen? 10 minutes later, I walked out of the bathroom. The car was gone. Not moved. Not idling down the road. Gone. At first, I thought maybe it was a prank. I walked the whole lot. Nothing. Just wind and the occasional passing car. Then an hour passed. And another. People came and went. A trucker asked if I was okay. I lied. Said I was waiting for my girlfriend. That's when the realization hit. They left me. Not by accident. Not out of forgetfulness. Intentionally. My own family had stranded me in the middle of nowhere like it was a game. Let's see if he can make it back. I could almost hear Alan's voice. Dude, I bet he's crying right now. Dad, smug as always, if he's not as stupid as he looks, he'll figure it out. They thought it was funny. I almost reached out. I almost borrowed a phone and called them, begged them to come back. But then I remembered all of it. Every slap disguised as a joke. Every time they called me useless. Every moment they treated me like a burden. Instead, I called information. Got the number for the nearest shelter in Grand Junction. Then I asked a kind woman, a stranger, if she could give me a ride. That was the beginning of everything. That night, I slept on a cot in a shelter, wearing the same Metallica t-shirt and jeans I'd had on during the trip. I had nothing. No money. No ID. No plan. But I had freedom. And the next morning, I had a dishwashing job. Geraldine, the diner owner who took a chance on me, was this tattooed, tough-as-nails woman in her 60s who didn't smile much but didn't treat me like garbage either. She said her dishwasher had quit yesterday. You steal from me, you're dead. Start now. I worked. I saved. I figured out how to get a new ID, a cheap phone, and a bus pass. 7 days later, my old phone number rang. It was my mom, crying, begging, saying they came back and couldn't find me, saying it was a joke gone wrong. I heard Alan laughing in the background. I heard my dad telling me to quit being dramatic and get my ass to Uncle Rick's. But something inside me had changed. You wanted to see if I could make it on my own? I said, calmly. Watch me. I hung up, blocked every number I could remember, changed my phone the next day. 27 missed calls. And I never looked back. By the end of that summer, I had a tiny studio apartment above a laundromat, a job I didn't hate, and for the first time in my life, peace. No screaming. No insults. No golden child overshadowing me. I built something. Small. Fragile. But mine. And when I checked my old email, the one my family still used, the messages kept coming. From Mom, please come home. We're sorry. From Dad, this childish stunt needs to end. From Alan, dude, it was just a joke. Grow up. I never responded. Not once. Because here's the thing about family. If they leave you behind for fun, they don't get to be there for the comeback. And mine was just beginning. Life has a way of surprising you when you're finally at peace. I didn't plan on falling in love. I didn't even think I'd trust anyone again, let alone share my closet-sized apartment above a laundromat with them. But that was before Clara. She came into my life like a quiet breeze, not loud, not flashy. Just steady. Real. She started showing up at Sunny's every Tuesday and Thursday. Same booth. Same order. Denver omelet. No tomatoes. Black coffee. She always had a tablet open, spreadsheets and charts glowing faintly on the screen. At first, I figured she was some kind of accountant, maybe mid-level finance or insurance. Quiet work. Private. We flirted like idiots. I wore fake name tags. She called me out on them without looking up from her portfolio. It took 4 months before we had our first real conversation, and it only took one night to realize she was smarter than anyone I'd ever met. We started dating slowly, cautiously, then living together. I taught her how to make hash browns without setting off the smoke alarm. She taught me how to invest my tips without getting scammed. She never asked about my family. Never pushed. But one night, after a nightmare that left me drenched in sweat and staring at the ceiling, I told her. Everything. The rest stopped. The phone calls. The silence that followed. She didn't say anything right away. Just reached for my hand, held it tight, and whispered, "You don't owe anyone your pain." That's when I knew I'd marry her. We kept things small. No big wedding. Just me, her, Doug as my best man, Geraldine baking a lopsided but delicious apple pie, and a handful of people who actually knew me, the real me. What I didn't know was that Clara's world, the one behind the tablet and charts, was bigger than I imagined. See, she didn't just work in finance. Clara managed impact portfolios for major philanthropic trusts. She wasn't a millionaire. She managed billions. Not for herself, but for hospitals, social housing initiatives, and nonprofit equity funds across the country. She didn't talk about it. Didn't flash it. Her car was the same beat-up Civic she had in college. She shopped at the same grocery store as me. Wore hoodies instead of blazers. But when she walked into a boardroom, entire institutions listened. And she never once used it to make me feel small. She never made me feel like banks used to, like I was a burden, a joke, someone barely tolerated. She saw me. And she married me. We kept her last name off the wedding announcement. She didn't even mention it on social media. But the world has eyes. And one day, the world turned its gaze back toward me. It started with a LinkedIn connection request. Name, R. Mercer. My father. I didn't accept it. But I saw the profile. He hadn't updated anything in years, just former owner at Mercer Hardware. But what caught my eye was the new headline. Proud father. Hoping to reconnect with my son, Salvador. A week later, Irene sent a handwritten letter. Yes, handwritten like a Hallmark card from a ghost. Salvador, we came across an article about a woman named Clara. Her work in grant funding is remarkable. The last name caught our eye. We couldn't help but wonder if she's someone special to you. If we're right, well, it explains a lot. Maybe it's time we talk again? I read the letter twice. Then I set it down and laughed. Not a happy laugh. The kind of laugh you let out when irony pulls up a chair and pours itself a drink. They didn't miss me. They missed what they thought I could offer now. Alan reached out next. Through a comment. On Clara's professional page. Looks like we're family again. Let's catch up. I didn't reply. Clara didn't even mention it. Just raised an eyebrow and clicked block. But then the big one hit. Clara came home one day, a bit off. Quiet. Unfocused. Everything okay? I asked. She nodded slowly. I had a meeting this morning with a foundation I've worked with before. Small trust, mostly local investments. They're applying for federal grants and want to partner with one of my funds. The guy running it mentioned you. I stiffened. Who? Your dad. I felt the air leave the room. She went on. He didn't know we were married. Not at first. But then he saw my full name and froze. Started asking questions. Said he'd been trying to rebuild bridges with you. And that maybe now, with everything you're a part of, you'd see things differently. I stared at her. What did you say? Clara shrugged. That I don't mix business and family. And that if he wanted to talk to you, he should start with an apology. Not a pitch. That's when it clicked. They weren't just reaching out to make amends. They wanted in. Because the grants they were applying for, Clara helped shape the funding panels behind them. She didn't sign the checks, but she influenced the room that did. And suddenly, After 15 years of silence, they were desperate to sit across the table from their abandoned son. I never thought I'd be the gatekeeper to anything. Now I was the gate, and they were knocking. I told Clara I needed time to think. She nodded. No pressure, no judgment. But one night, after the dishes were done and the house was quiet, she said one thing. If they see you now and only value you because of who you married, they still don't see you. And she was right. So I didn't write back. I didn't call. I didn't agree to dinner. Instead, I made reservations for two. Just Clara and me. Same booth where we first met. Denver omelet, no tomatoes. And a ring box I'd had refitted with something new, a note. Inside it read, "You're not just my wife. You're the reason I never went back to the cage. Thank you for seeing me before anyone else did." She smiled, reached for my hand, and whispered, "Now we build something they can never take." And we are. But I know they're still watching, still circling. Because the people who once left me behind, they've finally realized I'm not the boy from the back seat anymore. I'm the man they can't buy into. And they're begging to come back. I always thought the worst thing my family ever did to me was leave me behind at that rest stop. I was wrong. Because the worst thing wasn't abandonment. It was when they came back pretending it never happened. It started with a dinner invitation. Handwritten. On thick, cream-colored stationery like they'd pulled it straight from a wedding catalog. The kind of envelope that feels too heavy for its own good. Inside, "We'd love to host you and Clara for dinner. Just family. Just to talk. No expectations. We miss you." It was signed by all three, Banks, Irene, and Alan. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was tempted, because I was planning my answer. Clara never told me what to do. She never needed to. She just said, "I'll stand where you need me, even if that's behind a locked door." But I didn't want a door. I wanted a mirror. So I sent back a reply. Short, printed, formal. "Thank you for the invitation. My wife and I are hosting a private donor dinner that evening. Attendance is limited. But since you reached out, I've reserved 2 seats for your consideration. No address. No details. Just a name. Mercer Initiative. And the date." They took the bait. The event wasn't for them, obviously. It was a quarterly gathering Clara's foundation hosted. A mix of nonprofit partners, investment managers, civic leaders. This time, I joined her on stage for the closing speech. She wanted people to understand the lived impact of economic disconnection, not just the data. So I told them my story. Not by name. No mention of the rest stop. But I talked about growing up in a house where silence hurt more than yelling. Where birthdays were skipped. Where leaving someone behind was considered a joke. I told them about finding purpose and people who saw me when no one else did. Clara took my hand at the end. There was applause. And at the back of the room, near the exit, I saw them. Banks. Irene. No Alan. They didn't approach me until most people had left. I could feel them hesitating, like moths near a flame they couldn't quite touch. "Salvador," my mother finally said. I turned. "Waited. You spoke beautifully." She smiled, but her eyes were scanning. The room, the name tags, the whispered conversations still swirling around Clara and me. Banks stepped up next. "We didn't know. About everything you've done. About Clara." That was the first time he said her name out loud. I nodded. "You didn't ask." There was silence. Then Irene leaned in, her voice trembling. "We want to be part of your life again, if you'll let us." It took everything in me not to laugh. "Why now?" They looked at each other, like they hadn't rehearsed that part. Banks cleared his throat. "Because we were wrong," he said slowly. "Because you've built something remarkable. And because, well," he trailed off. And that's when I knew. They weren't here to apologize. They were here to align. To hitch themselves to the name I rebuilt without them. To benefit from the new version of Mercer I'd become, not the one they abandoned, but the one whose wife now consulted on national funding policy. They wanted proximity. Access. They wanted in. I shook my head. "I'm not angry anymore," I said. They both looked up, hopeful. "But I'm not open either." That hope cracked instantly. "You taught me that family can be conditional," I continued. "So I made peace with losing mine. You only came back because Clara's name opened a door you thought you could walk through." I took a breath. "She didn't marry into your family. I married out of it." Banks looked away first. Irene started to cry, not from regret, I don't think. From rejection. The one thing she'd always weaponized. I turned to leave. Then stopped. "Oh," I said, pulling a small envelope from my jacket pocket. "This is for Alan." I handed it to Irene. Inside was a check. Not real money, just a printed mock-up. Pay to the order of what you could have had. Amount. Too late. Memo. For leaving me behind. They didn't say a word as I walked away. And they never tried again. It's been almost a year since that night. Clara and I now split our time between two cities. She still does her work, quietly shaping futures. I run a local grant mentorship program for teens like I used to be stuck, small, overlooked. Every once in a while, someone asks me if I ever hear from my family. I tell them this. Sometimes, ghosts knock. But I don't answer doors that lead to cages. I didn't get revenge. I got free. And that was the real birthday gift I never got.